To me, particularly in the context of, climate and, society's ills, really, I think all of our work, including the work of private companies, I think should be focused on movement building, which I think adds a little bit more substance, toward some of the underlying, characteristics of, when you feel like you're in the middle of a movement, which is like that emotional strength, the conviction, the urgency, the excitement, and frankly, the high stakes that are involved, I think, with a lot of the work that we're doing.
Welcome to Net Present Value, where we explore the intersection of money, meaning, our impact, and the legacy we create. Thanks for being here.
Hey everybody, Timo here. I'm with my friend Dave Fortson from LOA Labs. Dave is joining us from Santa Barbara, California, and Dave and I have had the great pleasure of getting to know each other over Twitter, Regen Network, and his work he's doing at LOA and Better World Blockchain, and ReFi. You might have recently heard him on the Block Explorer podcast, where he talked about ReFi, which is also known as Regenerative Finance. Dave, welcome to Impact Jam, where I sit down with people I know, like, and trust, and we're going to rap about some things today.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I made the cut, and yeah, it's a pleasure. It's anything you call me for, I'm down for, Timo. So here I am. So bring it on.
Cool. Well, I think I'd like to start, Dave, is you say you're in the movement building business. So just wrap on that for a minute.
Yeah. So yes, conventionally, I probably hew closer to the marketing, communications, and strategy side of things. But literally since I was 18 at UC Santa Barbara, I've considered myself and the work I do with my colleagues as movement building. Right. It's more. I think it adds some critical layers of depth to how we interact with each other. Movement building for me is there's a level of focus, there's a level of intention, there's a level of goal-oriented movement of humans, all kind of pulling in the same direction. And to me, particularly in the context of climate and society's ills, it feels rather trite to be in the kind of the marketing communications business, and that really I think all of our work, including the work of private companies, I think should be focused on movement building, which I think adds a little bit more substance, toward some of the underlying, characteristics of, when you feel like you're in the middle of a movement, which is like that emotional strength, the conviction, the urgency, the excitement, and frankly, the high stakes that are involved, I think, with a lot of the work that we're doing. And I think also allows us to move beyond maybe some of the more KPIs or OKRs, depending on which frameworks we're using, that like how many more likes did I get, how many more plays. It's in some ways, it's if you can move one person and you move the right person, it can be far more important than getting 1,000 clicks that are more sugary high than they are substance behind actually meeting a goal. And so I think it's more of that kind of thinking that kind of we wrap our work around at LOA, kind of how we measure our progress and orient our company to kind of present itself and show up in the world.
It's like quality over quantity.
At the basics, yeah. I think there's a lot of, and I think marketing comms gets a bad name in a lot of ways, and earns it because it is easy to game systems, right? To look good in what you do. But in this time of, a climate crisis and really big, human or global and human scale issues, we got to like move people. Like we want them to feel it in their bones and in their soul that what they're doing on a daily basis is in service to something bigger, and calls people to purpose and to take action, no matter how small. And it's got to frankly be beyond the click of your mouse or otherwise. It's got to be something bigger.
Have you ever seen the Saturday Night Live skit Slacktivsm with Louis C.K.?
Yeah, I've seen some
before he got in trouble, right? But that's a good one for to move beyond Slacktivism, right? Where you I donated, I just sat behind my computer and desk jockeyed. Like, how do you actually do something that creates real world impact on the ground?
Right. That's right.
In terms of like what resonates there with Dave is like speed, scale, urgency, like feel, right? Like how do you motivate people to action, like you said? Like at LOA, like what's like, I assume and from what I've seen is like storytelling, dialogue, conversation. What else are you guys focusing on to make those connections with people?
I think one thing we do well is, we can, in some ways, serve as a router. I think the way you do too, Timo, is like we're a router for good people to connect with each other, good projects to connect with each other. Taking my friend Gregory's, saying about collaborating in the competition of, I was on a conversation this morning with my colleague Pranav and, talking about all these folks that we're running into and talking to. And I was explaining, even at a business level, it's my goal is not a quick buck on any of this. It really is to build relationships and to be of service, and whatever that looks like, just to provide like deep value. And that could be as simple like making a connection between two people that all they needed was like that little spark of connection. It could be how we show up in a meeting and frankly, clam up and just let people who are clearly fired up and are feeling that moment, and we don't need to insert ourselves as like through ego or through other things to like have LOA Labs be upfront on something. I think I posted one time on Twitter, it's like sometimes we're the coach, sometimes we're the player, sometimes we're in the stands, and sometimes we're watching reading the box score and talking about it afterward. I mean, we really can play a number of different roles in service to these movements. And I'd say more practically, on the ground, we're playing a connection role, we're playing an activation role in designing campaigns. We're running a validator that allows us to serve, in a governance and security role for protocols. And we're also, we're the voice behind, some of, the bigger players in the space, and helping, capture their voice and distribute it on social channels and other places. So, we practically have very specific tasks that we can show up for on behalf of a project or a movement. And sometimes though, it's like we're part of so many conversations, and in a lot of ways, we're just connecting dots and helping, surface ideas for new relationships and ways of interacting with each other. Which goes back to a saying we have in LOACom, which is what LOA Labs spun out of. And it was, building a better world with every interaction. Interaction, with inter being italicized, that every, I think we have the opportunity to, and it's like you really think about embracing this, and that every interaction that you have with another human, that there's like a regenerative or a generative way of engaging that person that, understands and observes how they are presenting or showing up in the world, understands where they're at that moment, and you're looking for like, how can I just make something that much better? And it may just be a very small thing, and maybe it's a big connection, maybe it's a new funding source, maybe it's a new campaign idea, but also could just be like, they're having a rough day, and you just bring in a little figment of your own experience or wisdom, or maybe it's just like being quiet and listening, but always trying to think of like every interaction is an opportunity to make things just a little bit better. And bringing that and imbuing that concept into a company or into a DAO and how we work together is like core to what we do.
It's like a pay it forward type mechanism, or the gift economy, which I keep coming back to in ReFi.
That's right. Yeah. And I think it's just like, it's culture, right? At the end of the day. I mean, I think that culture of that way of being is, I think, indispensable to, just how we redevelop our relationship as humans to each other.
Yeah. It's like the word extrovert, right, comes to mind, or introvert. And when you're in these group meetings, whether it be in person or if you're on a Zoom meeting and like there's a bunch of people and everyone's thinking, right? Everyone has ideas, opinions, but then like there's half the room or 75% of the room doesn't say anything. It's like giving that space, right?
That's right.
To me, when I watch you guys operate, in like you guys are, I feel like Wizard of Oz might not be the right terminology, but like you're connecting behind the scenes and you're letting other people, like, spotlight might not be the right word either, but like you're allowing space, right? That's like people say that a lot of, like, okay, let's allow space for see what emerges. And to me, Web3 is very emergent. Like how do we, or DAOs, right? Like how do you let something emerge?
Totally. Well, and I appreciate that observation. I mean, I think that's astute in observing how we try to show up. And again, I mean, we're not immune to like wanting a little bit of spotlight here and there, but I think, I've been in this business for the movement building business for 25 years. And, I've seen a lot of, like we're in this like zeitgeist moment right now in ReFi. And, and I was sharing this with some other colleagues in the space who've been in for quite some time. There's so much beautiful energy happening right now. And it's like chaotic, right? And it's vibrant, and it's like a high frequency buzz happening right now. And everyone's like got the great ideas. And, I was just, encouraging some of my colleagues in the space of just like, it's, who are like, maybe feeling marginalized or not, recognized for their contributions. And I'm just like, it's okay. It's okay. Like, this is just like, this is actually something absolutely gorgeous that's happening right now. And really, we should wrap our arms around it and be of service. And knowing that, frankly, a lot of it's going to, reality will start to set in a lot of ways of just, it's frankly hard to build businesses to begin with, add in Web3, add in a new, way of like designing companies, add in all of the other valleys of death that are still going to, from a business perspective, like approach all of our different projects. And, it's, some of us are going to make it and some aren't. And the ones that aren't, like those humans behind those movements should have a very welcome, cultivated, warm place for them to like realign and reconnect, to continue to grow the movement, that knowing that maybe their idea didn't take off in and of itself, but their energy is part of like this movement that really needs to just be cultivated and supported and really and grown as much as possible, during these ups and downs, like, and again, where it feels like we're in a big up moment right now. But, I've been just, seeing this for so many years that we're going to all have a down moment, even in ReFi, where there's just there's a lot of folks now, and, life happens and business happens, and some of those folks are just going to need a different place to plug in. And I want to make sure that all of them, who are clearly dedicated and passionate, have a space, because I would want that for myself. I mean, there's no guarantee LOA Labs is going to be here tomorrow either. And I just want to know that, hey, Timo, man, it didn't work out. What you got for me is what's basing, where's basing at, or whatever. It's like, I'm not going to stop. And I just know that, if we build our relationships and our, in a really good, generative way, that, even if, what looks like today is not going to look like tomorrow, but all the humans, I'd love to make sure we have space for them, and that we're creating like the surface area of opportunities for those folks that we're inspiring, and that they're inspiring other people, and like, growing like tree rings, more than growing, going up like a hockey stick, like really deep foundation, thick trunks, that may grow a little slower, but the foundation to like be able to survive the fires, the crown fires and things like that, it's there, because that's coming too. It'll be here, and some for people, some sooner than others. And, as long as we take care of each other, I'm not worried about our movement. I think it's just going to be just fine.
Yeah. I mean, what comes to mind, Dave, is like concentric circles, right? Or like that when you mentioned tree rings, actually the cover art, I'll send it to you for net present value of the show, is actually a tree trunk with burn marks on it for that reason of like, nice. What's the story, right, of each tree, and like of each one of us, right? Or what year in your life, right? Like you said, you've been in the business 25 years, but like what years are like longer or wider? What years are narrower? What years had thicker bark? What years had more water, right?
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly right. I think that's a good analogy. And yeah. But I think the key is, that it's I'm just so, again, appreciating the energetic time. And and I just would counsel all of us, like, this is such a marathon we're in, and I know we've got urgency, we've got 60 harvests left, but, we've got a pattern for personal sustainability as much as we do ecological sustainability. It's really one and the same. It's like the first environment we have is ourselves, and like to take care of and to rehole and reconnect. And, frankly, all of us burning out and spinning our wheels, is not doing anyone any service. It's more of like, how do we activate our colleagues and our friends and provide them the places and the on-ramps into systems like the DAOs that we're building, and these models can contribute and provide a lot of value.
Yeah, what comes to mind for me there is like something we keep saying, like in Basin, like, how do we help people give their gifts to the world, right? Of like, whether they think their gift is A, B, or C today, it might be D, E, or F like 3 weeks from now, right? Like they thought they wanted to be like a front runner, they thought they wanted to be a programmer, or they thought they wanted to do, something detailed, but really they want to do something more strategy or general. It's like helping people adjust also, right? Of like,
totally,
where they fit in, right? And how can they give their gifts to the world, which then personally, right, they feel fulfilled, but then also they can help the greater movement.
Yeah, I think it's another really good observation. Even in thinking how we design for value within our companies, like for human value, and I kind of fell into a Web 2 format and how I thought about even hiring around LOA Labs. We were like interviewing for one position, the full-time position, just to start with, and we had enough work quickly to hire for more than that. But, I think we interviewed like 25 people, and again, we're an LLC right now and transitioning, but I ended up not hiring a full-time, one full-time position, but hired 5 people.
Cool.
And it was all based on, the vibe, like no drama, curious, just wants to collaborate, wants to be part of a team, has got some legitimate, talent in something. And, again, it's hard to like know in like even with a CV exactly how that shows up. But and just a genuine desire to like contribute at the core. Right. And so, we just similarly, just like, I just looked across a bunch of these folks and said, wow, you're all awesome. Let's all come in. Let's figure out together how to like sort value amongst each other, and knowing that, there'll be some bumps along the way, but I'm not going to just assign you with just this hat or just this hat and try to lock you in. Let's grow as an organism and be super observant to like what we're drawn to individually, and what natural skills you may have that you didn't even know you had exactly, but you have a certain way in this type of relationship that we're building between each other and between ourselves and the projects that we're working on. And it's, it was a little bit of I'm not frankly hired that way before. And it's been lovely. It's like, if people are just automatically starting to like float into their places and with full permission that they can float into different things. And that, that's the beauty of Web3, that, and I think you do this a great, if you're willing to contribute, we're going to find space for you, right? There's a place to plug in, because we need all hands on deck, and we need, the most narrow skill sets all the way to the generalists, all working in this beautiful, harmonious fashion. And so a lot of us, I think, on the leadership level or organizational development level, I think would do well to like do some approach to like hiring or recruitment in that way, of just being like, who are just clearly people that are just rocking it out there, just rocking shit. Like, bring them in, and you just figure out, you just start finding a way to compensate them, and then let them like naturally express themselves, and then you build around them.
Right.
I think is just a way that I think we'll continue to approach within LOA Labs, and beyond, how we think about growing our organism and really harnessing its highest potential.
I love, Dave, how a couple of things. You're using the word organism, right, instead of organization.
Yeah.
Which I love. If we can apply nature more, right, to like human output, like that, to me, that's important. But then also I love the air quotes around like anytime you're using like a normal word, like management or human
Yeah.
resources. You're doing air quotes, and
Yeah.
I think that's like what we call things matter, right? Like
Totally.
nomenclature. And so I think that like that is a really interesting experiment we're doing with DAOs, right? Or organizational behavior of like DAOs aren't necessarily new, like they're like co-ops, they're associations, they're just a different name. We're calling something of old ways of doing stuff and with new tools. But like the circles come back to mind. And I think this is where LOA to me also really excels, is like if you take the concentric circle and you just spread those out and do a Venn diagram, like this whole theory of like edge behavior, or like the the action happens at the edges, or like the connectivity, right, of like where those circles overlap, and whether they be individuals, like you're talking about your 5 different people, like where do they overlap, or even team, right? If you have like in Basin, we have a marketing team, a messaging team, we have a tokenomics team, we have a properties team, we have a legal and finance, and like those people are all still kind of the same people, but there's like the skill sets, right? Or like you need different skill sets in each group.
That's right.
Yeah. So like the circles, like how do you approach the edges, right? And like you're working with IXO and Regen and I think Juno, right, as a validator.
A validator, yeah. Bico WG on ops and marketing, and Regen Foundation, which is pretty distinct organization even within the Regen network ecosystem. And some others that I think we'll be onboarding. So working the edges, again, I come out of some level of permaculture education when I lived on this for years on this 300-acre ranch that we were trying to restore, old family ranch, and we talked so much about edges and the power of creating edges that were in a lot of ways receptors to
love that
to new talent, to new relationships, to new interdependencies. And that, to like put up, these fences, proverbial or literal, it's, kind of that saying of, you may be keeping something out, but what are you keeping in? And so can you design your edges that are open, like receptors, like even at the very biological level, like catalysts, where like something can come in and find an open up a new like energy flow between that didn't exist before, right? And that in some ways those edges are looking for a like edge to come and like meet up and create a new relationship. So I think organizationally, and again, because it's interesting for us, right? We work with a number of different projects, and they have their own unique approaches, and in some ways they can be, they're competing for sometimes similar resources and humans, but the way that we design our relationships with them, and even as we're like out in the world right now talking to all of these new projects that may be frenemies, or they may be like really tight in and close. The goal is to find out like what's that edge, like where is that like edge of like just where these two projects can like keep like open energetic flow between them at the end of the day. Like even if it doesn't have to be like freeway wide, levels or whatever, or the wide river, it could be like a stream between them. But to keep all of them open, and that there is continuous flow of energy between, no matter how small, is so important in my perception, on how to like design for a resilient, beautiful quilt of organizations and projects that are all have a shared set of missions and values. And even if they may have some overlapping products or approaches to things, that keeping those lines of communication open at minimum, if not even having like business relationships, even when things get there's a little bit of like tightness between them, to me is like, it's like even on a human level so important. Where I just think it just creates it creates the possibility, right? It just keeps possibilities open at a baseline, and because you just don't know, because life is guaranteed to serve you up something that will create a moment in time where that little stream should become a river between two people or two organizations or multiple organizations all at once. But to restart relationships and to shut down relationships is so time and energy intensive, and humans are terrible with ego about starting up things after they've been shut down versus just like, let's just figure out a way to like keep things in, and let's just figure it out. Like, let's just have a space so that we continue to communicate in, and I think that's where some of like the larger like ReFi work, the ReFi DAOs, I think doing a great job around that. And just those people who just carry that spirit, because I just think we need that so much right now in our movement, because we just need everybody at the table, and even at the expense of like inefficiencies at time, I think is okay.
So you mentioned like permaculture, right? And observe and interact, and applying that lesson. Like when you mentioned like flow and like openness and energy flows, like my wife is a doctor of Oriental medicine or an acupuncturist, right?
Yeah.
Like, so we think about that, like in terms of like her business used to be called, before kids, it used to be called Balance Point. Like, and like, we always come back to like, what's the balance point that we're trying to get to, either, in our personal life or our household or our business. And to me, Dave, like a lot of the stuff you've talked about in ReFi, regenerative finance, it comes back to like balance and balance point. Like what are your thoughts on that? Do we have to get rid of fossil fuels, right? Or can we still live with fossil fuels, or can we still consume resources, right, and cut down palm forests, or do we have to totally get rid of that? Like, kind of where do you? Those are specific examples, but more like philosophically, where do you land on like balance?
And maybe I'll approach it with a slightly different frame. I appreciate the balance framing, but I think what it keys to me immediately is my thesis of change, or the thesis of around change, and some people that may be a little bit more a little oriented, a little bit different. I'm not a fan of revolution. I'll just say generally, like, to me, a long time thesis has been, and I was in politics for a number of years. Both I ran for office when I was 21, got elected. I ran political campaigns for almost a decade when I was in my 20s, and and I just saw, and we've seen it in the States of just these rapid swings back and forth, and leave people with whiplash. Where to me, like, revolution is not. To me, change happens on a spectrum, and I like the term feathering in and feathering out so much more as just like a thesis of change. And that's not to say that there's not faster ways of feathering in, even mechanically, like and how you've seen certain machines that they have the really fine machinery moving faster, and then some of the bigger gears moving slower. But like feathering in ecosystems to each other, feathering in renewable energy while we're feathering out fossil fuels and mitigating and reducing its impact, feathering in new economic models, and feathering out degenerative models, to me is from a sustainability and for things to take root, given the nature of societies and given the nature of humans' resistance to change, to me is like the longer term, more sustainable way of thinking about change. So while I fought oil companies for a long time, I used to one of my first environmental activism projects was to take on Mobil, which was trying to put a slant drilling rig going underneath a marine sanctuary out in Santa Barbara. And we did guerrilla protests. We were in the chancellor's office. We printed up T-shirts that said "Fuck Mobil," "Stop drill view." We were radical, going at it and at it and at it. And I still have, like, frankly, a lot of that like radicalness in me. But on a practicality level, I want that like full spectrum of being able to do boardroom activism with Mobil. I want the ability to have Mobil, and Exxon start to understand to use their massive resources and power to start to help feather in renewables and shift their whole mindset, and to make sure that the workers and the jobs that are being feathered out and being feathered into renewable energy, and just having, and again, I'm not saying we don't need to do that quickly, because again, if you think of feathering, it's not doesn't have to be slow, but there's a nature of what feathering means that I think allows for keeping balance, to go back to your point, right? I think it's like, I think the same thing as like a longtime surfer. To me, like, the magic place on a wave is when you're trimming a wave, right? It's right on the wave. If a wave's like this, you're like in this spot where it's like before it's going to fall over, but not at the bottom where you're stalling out. And it's the least amount of energy that you can spend on a wave to go the fastest with the least friction. And it's just this beautiful place on a wave that is, it's called trim. And if you think of trim is related to feathering. It's just like you're trimming this beautiful energetic part of a wave that to me is like, I use as an analogy all the time, and how to think about how we shift, when we're riding a big wave, not to get too up over top of the wave, or you could fall and get crashed, and not to get the bottom and get stalled out. Like you just want to like shoot that hole really beautifully and smoothly, like some of the beautiful surfers in the world. So lots of analogies there, but I think you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I love that analogy. You could apply it to almost everything. Like what's
Totally.
The sweet spot? And I love the feathering, the trimming. I mean, it also goes back to like the introvert extrovert we were talking about. Like if you're too introverted and you don't speak up, you're down at the bottom of the wave and you're not like getting any. But if you're up at if you're too extroverted and too egotistical, like you're like gonna crash over the falls of the wave. Yeah, so it's like this sweet spot of I love that. Before we move on to the next segment, I did want to come back to, I guess, three things, just so everyone knows what it is. Validators, right? Like what are validators? BCOWG, and then Better World Blockchain. If you could just like tell everyone what those three things are, because we kind of meandered around
brushed
those.
over those. Sure. Let me see. I'll take them in that order. So validators in a proof of stake network, a validator is typically, or at least in Cosmos, the typical blockchain has about 75 validators, and the validators are essentially there are servers that are running and running the operating system of that network. And each of them are chosen at different times, randomly, for security reasons, and also for peer-to-peer safety, to validate a block, the next block of information, where they all can be like, "Yep, what LOA Labs validator did. It's not nefarious. It's integrous block of information. Everything's good to go. We all agree." So, and the flip side of that is, if I'm being a bad actor and I'm trying to enter in malicious code or some, other nefarious tactic, software tactic to exploit the network, there's got to be 75 other validators who are going to go along with that plan, and they have to be willing to give up their financial stake, because people have delegated or staked to them, in order to do that. So it's a really interesting system where, by token holders validating with numerous, by token holders delegating to numerous validators and placing their financial trust, in the integrity of their validation, it creates not 100 proof, but it makes it really difficult to game a system compared to a centralized server owned by Facebook that, if they have a bad day, they could go down to power, they could go down to a hack. It affects everybody. My validator, because of nefarious reasons, or because of, power went out in Santa Barbara or wherever my server is being hosted, I've got 74 peers or colleagues who are going to make sure things keep moving through. The validators also serve as proxies on governance. So like if you're as a token holder, you validate to LOA Labs. If I vote and you don't, my vote on behalf of proposal 1 or 2 or 3 carries your vote. If you vote and I vote, your vote is still is separated from my vote. But the point is, like, validators play an incredibly important role in not only securing the sanctity and integrity of the blockchain for Regen Ledger or Juno or otherwise, but they're really critical community members for governance and making sure that your values aligned. They're builders in the system, and and at the end of the day, they've got pretty significant financial stake. And the whole concept of like financial alignment, both between token holders and validators, and and within the community, all who are governing and overseeing this blockchain, has been a relatively novel and brilliant way of being able to, in a decentralized way, offer allowed for community governed ledgers, which for us, like particularly with Regen ledgers, it's really exciting, right? Because we've never been able to like publicly govern an ecological ledger that is going to be the baseline infrastructure for the future of ecological asset creation and and impact claims. So that's very nutshell. LOA Labs Validator on 5 different chains, and we see it as a service. Frankly, it still costs us more than we make to do this work, but it also it's like an opportunity to be of service and to contribute to the whole concept of blockchains as a technology and decentralized governance and decentralized ledgers for any number of domain specific areas. So we're super excited about it. So that's the validator side.
And I don't know if you probably can't tell with like tokens, right? But like full disclosure, like I know you, right? And like LOA Labs, and when I'm going through the validator list, like I have staked, right, or delegated several of my tokens to you guys, right?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and so it's like this idea of like trust and verification in the space of like, okay, who you're going to stake your tokens with to secure the network.
That's right.
So I just wanted to disclose that too. I don't think LOA can tell that, right? But I just wanted
to say,
tell.
Like, no, I mean, not unless I know your wallet address.
Right. Okay. Cool. And then
thank you for doing that.
Yeah. No. Thanks for the service. Right. BCOWG
infrastructure carbon offset working group. Really fascinating group of folks. It was largely organized by Gregory and Daniel from Stakefish. Daniel Huang, who's just a rock star, who spends so much time with the whole concept being, we've got to get some of the major players at the intersection of carbon and crypto, and climate and crypto together, and create a kind of clearinghouse both within that group and for the larger movement. And so there's Klima, Regen, Toucan, Offsetra, Creole, what's it called? Foundation, or Joseph Palant and his crew, and who else? There's a few others, and basically we meet every week, and there's internal things that we discuss about like what's moving in the market, and everyone's got sometimes competing initiatives, sometimes they're friendly initiatives, sometimes it's like there's new players on the block, and it's like, is this where does this kind of sit in if this is the wise elder group? But also our goal partially is to interact with the media, conventional media in particular, and dispel some of this notion that actually blockchain is a bad actor in the crypto climate movement. And I think as we've seen, and has now become dogma, I think in a lot of ways, that blockchain, once you're in it and you're in Web3, you realize how powerful of a tool it is in the effort to reverse climate change. But if you mention blockchain, the conventional wisdom still to this day, right, is that it's they imagine big mining farms and servers whirring and huge ecological footprints bigger than some countries, like that, to a T, right? Even to our ecological friends and otherwise, and it's really been, unfortunately, it's been damaging to the whole to the brand, if you will, and limiting, particularly, I think, some of the environmental organizations from really embracing the tech stack that I think both BCOWG, LOA Labs, I know because we came out of the conventional ecological space of like, I'm meeting with folks and being like, look, you've got to reset your thought process around what blockchain is, and in fact, you're going to get left behind if you don't figure out how to develop Web3 tools to get out on the front edge of reversing climate change and tokenizing ecological assets, tokenizing good human behavior relative to engaging the environment, you name it. There's all kinds of opportunities that I think people have kind of just shut down because they've got a historical understanding of crypto and Bitcoin and mining are all the same thing, and that is the totality of blockchain. And so anyhow, so there's an effort there with BCOWG of just reaching out to media folks, sharing stories, correcting the record, and things like that we do as LOA Labs on BCOWG's behalf, which it's been interesting, and I think we're chipping away. And I think, frankly, over the next couple of years, between the ReFi movement and some of the projects we're working on, we're just going to see big plays that'll start to shift the narrative on a more of a systemic level. But right now, we're like fighting little battles, in corners of the internet, being like, whoa,
right.
whoa.
And so that probably leads to like better world blockchain also in some way. What's the connection there?
Well, I mean, to me, in for LOA Labs, I explained this from day one because I think even some of the folks that we brought on board are probably thinking we're just ecologically focused. Better world blockchain to me is like much social as it is ecological. If there's one thing I've learned being in this business for as long as I have is that the issues of social equity and societal well-being are intimately tied to our ecological well-being. Like, we can't repeat the same mistakes, in my opinion, that we did in the early days of the environmental movement. And with all due respect to both sorry, am I there? Sorry. With all due respect to both of us, I mean, it cannot be a bunch of just white men running the show.
Yep.
I think we've got to integrate the communities that are most impacted by ecological issues and make sure they have a solid place at the table in decision making and governance and the distribution of power and the distribution of the wealth that Web3 can generate. And I'm interested in just as much that LOA Labs is of service to the disenfranchised communities that can figure out how to use Web3 tools to address some of these issues that, frankly, that are just, they're really difficult because they're complicated and they don't get the attention of the power brokers and systems and the funding pots that in Web2 world, because they're touchy, right? They're just issues that we'd rather not deal with, particularly those of us who are more well off or more comfortable than other folks. I mean, we have a lot of ability to like operate at levels, and in spaces that are, they're kind of safe and relatively comfortable. And there's battles going on every day where if we can't pull along communities of color and poor communities, low income communities, then we're gonna make the same mistakes as we did before. So the more we're hunting around for even projects that are using Web3 to address that, and to me that's like one of the most exciting areas that is outside currently of the ReFi buzz. But to me, ReFi should include all that too, right? Regenerative finance, in my opinion, is not just about ecological issues. It's about regenerating like human connection to each other and to the world. I think it has to, in order to succeed, or at least we've got to be able to have really clean and beautiful bridges to those movements as well, and be able to create the edges, right, that we're all interacting around in order to really build the comprehensive and full spectrum movement that's going to be required to reverse climate change, which is an existential threat to everybody, but we need everyone at the table, right? It can't just be the ecological focus. It can't just be, well-off white folks. It can't just be the technologically literate. Like, we need to bring everybody there. And so how do we create all of those opportunities is, I think, what better world blockchain means from our perspective.
Well, you're speaking my language, because like, to me, regenerative finance includes all that. Includes people, includes planet, includes profit. I mean, it's like this systemic changes that we're after. Dave, so better world blockchain is that right now? Is that just a slogan you guys are using, or is it like an organization you're forming, or kind of what's the where are you going with?
We got a bunch of domains around it a long time ago. No, it's something that we've been using the Better World movement for quite some time, which is not a and we have no like IP around it and don't desire it. But I think the Better World blockchain movement is something we've been using since we started in with Regen. I don't care if we coined it or not, frankly. It's just something, and we haven't defined it yet, although we did do some definition around Better World movement, more of an academic level that we'll probably bring into Better World blockchain because it's pretty transferable. But yeah, it's a good question. I think it could use some definition, and frankly, I think it could use like I would love to see as we're thinking about LOA Labs DAO, like, what does it look like to bring a lot of the kind of leading change makers from all the respective DAOs together, across, ecological, across social, around this Better World blockchain concept, where again, we're just cross-pollinating and energetically creating the connections so that there's a free flow of information and a shared to be allies, in alliance with each other at all times. Like it's got to be a big fucking table, and it's going to be messy because we all bring our baggage from our respective corners. But I think we have a responsibility on a vibe and a movement level to like, do our best to like keep our egos in check and just be like, how do we be of service to each other in this Better World blockchain movement? What does that look like? How do we design the systems? How do we share value? Do we just do the biggest token swap ever between all of the projects and put them all into a DAO and just manage each other's tokens in this big DAO for the sake of the whole, and then spin out and just invest madly in each other, from that, as an example, like a model, like there's so many options that we can use in Web3 that I think have not been available to us, that I can't even wait to see some of these really smart people in the room like innovate around those concepts, like to cement, not cement's not the right, to like really codify these relationships economically and governance wise. I think are just going to be such a rich area. I think that we can look forward to.
Yeah, I love all that. I mean, I think that's the potential of DAOs, DAO to DAO, like and I love the framing of Better World blockchain. If like you basically went to every single blockchain, right, and said, okay, how can we integrate with these blockchains? How can we become multi-chain or interchain? And it's, I mean, the impact, right, of like potential impact is huge of what those treasuries and the brain trust behind all those blockchain could do. LOA, the word LOA, what just quickly, what's the background on that?
Law of attraction. So
cool.
So the idea of what you give off to the world is what you get back. And I've gotten razzed by some people, and frankly, I'm not a super woo-woo guy, but for a long time it's whether you call it karma or whatever you want to call it, but after being for years in the conflict business in politics, I just like had my own epiphany about how I was wired personally, that I wanted to be able to be part of something that was there to design the interactions and relationships that were irresistible, right? And to attract in, because to attract in humans to something is so much more powerful than to demand or to even make policies around, because it's free will, and it's an attraction and gravity is like this invisible powerful force that is just hard to explain, like how different of a relationship that creates than obligation. And so to me, from like the ecological movement, and the social justice movement, designing the products and relationships and the cultural experiences that just are like irresistible. They're like, they do that thing where they chemistry wise change the way you look and feel about something, to me is like the magic space, right? And I don't always do this, right? I'm a pretty vocal guy generally, and I can get into my Twitter flame wars and all that stuff, but it's like, how do we design the products and how do we design so, that if Jobs and Apple could figure out a way to put 2 billion smartphones into our pockets because they were just irresistibly powerfully designed, why can't we do that in the ecological space, with our ideas and our products, and I'm not saying like we need the policy folks, we need the protests and all, it's a full spectrum, right? But for me, and how I want to engage the world and how I want to design or co-design with people, like that's what I'm looking for. And that's why, frankly, I'm so attracted to Web3 generally, is it because it's like this economic alignment where at the base, like even if you don't consider yourselves an environmentalist or a social justice advocate, if we can like make line up our economic incentives similarly, it's a pretty quick way of like quickly like finding cohesion. Because we've been living in a capitalist society for so dang long, that's all people know, right? And so we can figure out a way to feather in the values and like bring more morals around it. But from a speed level, like if I could figure out a way to like transact every credit card transaction everywhere to like imbue ecological values today, I mean, we're going to have a change like overnight, right? And that's what I think we're all like running to right now, to how do we solve that particular thing? All the while our brothers and sisters are like fighting in the streets and they're, passing policies, and United Nations doing this work. All these folks are just trying from their different perspectives, but this is to me like the economic tools and alignment has been a big missing piece for so long. And I feel like, we can, bring that together in a LOA way. We can attract the degens, we can attract the capitalists, we can attract the institutions, we can attract the big businesses because we give them an easy yes, right? We give them an easy yes to be advocates for the planet.
Yeah, I mean, to me, Dave, it goes back to like magnetic marketing, right? Of like,
that's right.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the attraction, and that's, like, to me, like these conversations, like know, like, and trust, right? So like how do you draw people that are like? I mean, you want to meet different people, right, and have diversity, but like at the same time, like you want to build your tribe, build your network, but and build those relationships that go on. Yeah,
that's right.
I love that. So this is called the impulse round.
Okay.
So I have a random number picker from my list here. Just say whatever comes to your mind. We'll do 5 of them.
Okay.
Really quick here. So the first one is number 1. Just say whatever comes to your mind, and then we'll go to the next one. Lawyers.
Tools. So many meanings there, but I mean all of them.
Yeah, exactly. Next one, Walmart. What was that?
Consumerism.
Next one, insurance.
Abused.
Next one, career.
Redefine.
This will be the last one here on this one. What do you consider fun, or how do you define fun?
Ocean.
Cool. All right. The next segment.
Good. All right. Hit me.
So this one I call getting personal. And it's kind of like inside the actor studio, where I just ask a question, you answer, and then we go to the next one.
Sounds good.
Why do you do what you do?
I love people, and I love the planet that I've gotten to enjoy. So that's where it started from, and now I think I have the added part of, like, I've got 2 kids, and as a protector and a father, like, it's not just about what I'm doing in the present to protect them from threats and vulnerabilities, but it's leaving a legacy of doing what I could to restore the planet that they're going to live on and their kids are going to live on.
What keeps you up at night?
My task list definitely keeps me up at night. When I feel like I'm not meeting somebody's expectations, I'm a pleaser, and I really it gives me anxiety to disappoint people. And sometimes, thinking about how shitty I played at pickleball on a particular day.
And that leads into the next one. When is the last time you failed?
That's a great question. Last time I failed. I don't know. I mean, it's a hard question for me to answer because I feel like I make mistakes, but I feel like failure is such a deterministic word. I mean, without, I don't want to sound self-serving, but I like, at least intentionally, like I don't feel like I've really, I guess failing, in some ways, like is like there's like an element of giving up on your principles to do something, and I don't feel like I've done that in a long time. I can't remember. I feel like I've made mistakes, and I feel like I make those pretty much on a daily basis, little mistakes here and there. But I almost always, it's still wrapped around an intention and a moral anchoring that I feel comfortable with. So I'm probably not answering your question very well, but I don't feel like I failed anytime recently, and I'm not planning on it, and it's not. I think it's more by design versus in framing than it is by what some people might determine as failure.
What are you most proud of?
Yeah, maybe that I've spent, since I was 16, I decided that, much to my parents' chagrin, that I was going to be a quote unquote environmentalist. And, and I think in the face of long odds, I've done it all of my adult life. And, I was determined to build a business around it, and I built several. And, I was determined to be at the intersection of some of the biggest movements in the world, and I feel like I'm there. So I guess in that way, I'm really proud that I was able to stick with it. And the other part I'm really proud of on a personal level is I'm proud of my marriage. I've been married for over 20 years, and my wife and I, I just love her to bits, and we've been through some hellish times together. And but I think, again, through it all, there's just been a commitment to each other that I'm so grateful for, especially on the other side of some pretty trying times, a decade ago. I couldn't be more happy that we kept it together.
Cool. So we're getting tight on time, but so just for the, I don't know if I'll include this in the show or not, but I have a reciprocity section that I had a client who one of the most successful clients I had, like just like really good at business, really good at what he did, but no matter where he was, he always answered the phone. He'd say, "This is Paul. How may I help you?" And so like the offer goes out. I know we're short on time today, but like an offer of reciprocity. So like I want you to think, right, of like what I can do to help you and build LOA and do, whatever you guys need. So just think about that and take me up on it on Twitter or like another combo. We'll skip that today, but it's the offer's on the table. So it's the reciprocity.
Thank you. Okay, that sounds great.
Okay, and then this is like the last main segment. I'm going to start. It's called the final five. I'm going to start a sentence, and you just finish it.
Yeah.
Passion is that indescribable feeling that emerges when you're doing something you love and you can do it against all odds. Money is
degenerative today, but regenerative tomorrow.
Happiness is
a state of mind and an attitude.
Success is
distorted in today's society. Tomorrow it will be the ecological legacy we leave for our kids.
And the last one of this segment is life is
pretty fucking fun.
Cool. So closing, Dave, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for all the work you're doing. Where's the best way for people to reach you, converse with you, find out what you're working on?
Thanks, Timo. I really appreciate it. It's been a fun exploration with you. To find us, loalabs.io on the web, or I think I'm at Dave_Fortson on Twitter. That's probably the two easiest places. Telegram, Earthboy75, Discord, you'll find me. So, I'm on every
I like that one.
Yeah, the Earthboy75. It was my first email address when email was happening in college, to date ourselves, Timo. Here we go. But yeah, we'd love to connect. And if you're in the change making business, and you're at the intersection of Web3 and like better worlds, we want to talk to you. We want to work with you. We just want to be connected. All about relationships.
Cool. And if you were to ask the listeners to do one thing to make a difference, what would it be? Like, what would you encourage them to do?
It's a great question. I think, I'm a big fan of incremental change. And I think, each of your listeners probably has a unique thing that they can offer the world to make it a better place. And I'd say, in the spirit of making a better world with every interaction, is just figure out one small thing you can do every single day. And to me, it's not, necessarily recycling. It's not necessarily planting a tree. It's like, there's just little good things that you can do for your fellow human and for the planet. To me, like, what I take pride in, even examples, I scoop up every bug off the pickleball court and I take it off and to the side and I give it back into the nature. Like, that's a little thing, but I think that's pretty dope.
Yeah,
and so,
I love that.
So if it's as small as that or as big as you want to jump in the mix with Timo and I on Web3 and crypto, we'd welcome you too.
Cool. Well, Dave, thanks for being here. And as we say in ReFi, let's fucking go.
Yeah, let's fucking go. All right. Thank you, Timo.
Cool, man. Thank you so much. Okay.
Right, bye-bye.
Bye.
See you.